Jim.
Okay, good morning and afternoon. Thanks a lot for everyone. I've been a really enthusiastic listener and learner on this for a few months now. And John was pretty insistent that I take my time to try to contribute something back. So here we go. Um, and we're going to go at something completely differently today, rather than sharing another theory to kind of help our the depth of our thinking about all these approaches to development. We're going to go into the real practical world, and I called it a practicum. So what I hope to do today was share experience I recently had trying to communicate these theories to a business audience. And the point in doing that is to just use this as an example for people on the call here to share with each other and help each other be better implementers of this, or sharing it with the outside world to put these theories into practice. So in general, that's what we're going to try to accomplish today. So I appreciate you being here and going with the flow. So just a few points is kind of my purpose, just to share this experience I had specifically with a business audience that were communications professionals. And by the way, communications professionals in the sustainable business world. They actually come from an organization, or they're brought together under an organization called Sustainable Brands. And this was a small group of people in corporate communications that were coming together in a cohort to just learn how to be more effective at not only promoting their company's more sustainable brands, but clearly the organization's purpose is to use branding, communications, and some of the better sides of business to help accelerate our progress towards a more sustainable world. So I'm going to walk through that presentation really quickly. I've just got a few questions just to seed a conversation, and then we'll discuss this. And again, it's all about helping us better share these theories with others so they can help, so we can all grow and learn together. So that's the idea. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, this is where I
Yes.
started. I mean, these are literally the slides I use. And I'm going to go through this really quickly because many of you are the experts in this world, so it'll be obvious to you. So I'm not going to bore you with the presentation, but this is how I presented it is what we're trying to do is inspire positive change. And we're in this polarized world, and communications professionals have huge opportunity to help us translate these issues into stories that inspire us and help us move forward rather than regress backwards. And certainly some leaders in this organization were really enthusiastic about the concept of SDI and how it could be used, and encouraged me to give this presentation. And there was only about 8 people on the line that showed up for this one. This was one of the first meetings of this cohort. So anyway, let's just kind of jump into it. So this is setting the stage of the world they know very well. Out in the world today, brands are under attack, and companies are under attack. Even some of those that tried to be the most aggressive around sustainability, whether it was from the environmental, climate change, nature health, or DEI kinds of elements. There's a huge backlash, particularly in the US, around these issues. We call it the anti-woke backlash in the US. And these teams are just in a horrible place right now. They know if they say too much, they risk getting substantial backlash. But if they say too little, they'll lose relevance. So that's the world that these people are living in, and that is the issue of the day with branding and communications in the U.S., or a good part of the U.S. business. Um, so when I started off and actually introduced my introduction into SDI back in the early 20s, and working with an innovator in the sustainable business world, Ray Anderson and Interface, and we were trying to understand as we learned about these issues, again, combining environmental issues and human social issues. We started understanding things, and it just seemed so obvious to us how the world needed to move forward. And what we saw was ridiculous. It seemed like conflicts among smart people that we really liked and trusted. And as we tried to describe the vision we had for moving forward, people just thought we were nuts, like we had an arm growing out of our head or something. They just couldn't understand what we were talking about, and we were having trouble communicating it. So as I was exploring those issues for this CEO, I came across spiral dynamics, and that really led my early exploration. And essentially, this presentation was to say, here is this framework that could help us understand these competing worldviews and help us understand not only how to communicate with them, avoid backlash, but also help move everyone one forward. That was the kind of core idea. And this was a phrase that bubbled up in my mind again 15, 20 years ago as I was studying is that this idea that our mindsets define what our eyes can see and our hearts can feel. And a couple of engineers, the founder of this company and I are both classically trained engineers. I'm a chemical engineer, originally in the oil and chemicals industry. And this was a revelation to us to look at the world in a different way. So this is how I briefly described spiral dynamics to this group, and only one person in the audience had even heard the term. None of them were versed in it in it at all. But to them, again, to communications, marketing, and branding people, it's just another layer of insights to understand our different audiences, where they come from, what influences their seemingly logical and sometimes illogical reactions, the kind of the key insights, inside that came from originally Claire Graves' work and others, and this idea that each of these worldviews have their light and their shadow, and understanding that is really the key to being able to integrate that into a different way of working. And essentially, the whole presentation is setting up the idea of the integral stage, and that being a mindset that's different than the battles we're facing now. And just for the oranges in the audience, I just gave them a little background of how much research was behind that to give a little credibility to it. So then I just broke from the PowerPoints and I said, what I'd like to do to start this is rather than more bullet points, I just want to tell you a very abbreviated story and see what that means to you. So it literally narrated, once upon a time, in a storm-lashed crossroads in the land of Veritas, five travelers meet, each shaped by a different path, but all seeing a great master, or all seeking a great master. One honors ancestral wisdom and listens to the voice of nature. One trusts only strength, courage, and action, ready to fight for control. One walks in very orderly steps, guided by tradition, hierarchy, thoughtful contemplation, and divine purpose. One calculates progress, guided by science and reason, driven to achieve wealth and success. And one dreams of equity, compassion, and justice for the overlooked. But as their paths converge, distrust flares. Each fears the other will destroy what they love most about their world and their communities. Words sharpen, judgment hardens. They cannot agree on direction, on values, or even truth itself. Then adversity strikes, a flood, a threat, a task no one can survive alone. They all react with their strengths. The warrior clears a path through danger. The keeper of tradition stabilizes their route with structure and resolve. The builder engineers tools to get them through. The dreamer lifts spirits, tending to the weary. And the elder reminds them who they are and why they matter. Slowly, suspicion softens. Curiosity replaces judgment. They begin to see not just what separates them, but what each contributes. And in that moment, they discover what many of us are just beginning to realize: the way forward isn't about picking the right worldview, it's about learning to speak across them. And then I just stopped and asked them if they recognized any of those kind of contrived characters in the people around them, whether it's at work, in their neighborhood, or Uncle Bob over the holidays when the family gets together, and we had a nice little chat about that. But then I said, let's meet each of these characters a little more deeply. And I went through a kind of very abbreviated, almost persona description of each of the world views. As you can tell, I've used AI to create even characters reflecting those, and I just walked through again these key themes that I've learned from many of you, and my research to describe these worldviews, each of them with the positives as well as the limitations, and I don't think we need to go through all of them. And even at times, I would add some other ideas of some of the either in literature or movie and film, fictional characters that fit along the way. For instance, the tribal Mufasa in the Lion King is an idea of another person that embodied that, or Tony Montana, the gang boss in Scarface. So yeah, these are the personas, the worldviews, the V memes that you all know so well. So we don't need to take um, a lot of time to go through them there. But then I talked about our lovely green world, and in the sustainability world, that is dominated the green V meme. I don't think there's much argument about that. All the self-righteousness, the passion, the cancel culture, but I tried to again, initially lean into the strengths of what brings this group together, but also as politely and gently as I could, started uncovering to them what the downsides of our approach might be. And we had a short little conversation, and some of those they recognize, but still just really having a hard time looking through their um, absolute conviction and commitment to this worldview, and why others were wrong. I mean, it's clear elements of the meme green, the mean green, as several people would describe it. So I asked them, just think about, okay, here's these five worldviews. Let's have a little conversation about your last communications campaign, your last big post that you did on LinkedIn or whatever. Who are you speaking from? What worldview were you speaking from? And then flip that about what worldviews do you think your audience was represented? That created an interesting conversation. They started to understand it and develop ability to kind of, you know, position different ideas around this, and then went to a specific example. And there was a person that was supposed to be on this from Procter and Gamble, but couldn't make it at the last minute. And just to let you know, these are the level of companies that are involved with this. There was someone on the line from Mars, the big food company. Unilever was there. So this is the level of companies that are represented in this group. And I just gave them an example. Okay, let's talk about a new, clothes, detergent. Um, and I don't even remember what brand, but this was literally a quote that I found in a company positioning that. And the point I said to them says, folks like us, the Greens, the postmoderns, we dig it. We love it. It's, we feel empowered by it. It fits our passions, our values. We really love it. But on the other hand, just a quick discussion about, how the modern worldview would look at it. It's like, what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of it? Does it work? Where's the data? It sounds like you're completely avoiding the fact that it probably doesn't work, but you got all this other good stuff around it. But so I don't think I want this product. And the traditionals and the Warriors, and really we had an interesting short conversation about how the Warriors just hate weakness. And if you show you're weak, you're not even worth listening to. If anything, you need to be squashed and pushed out, because if we have weak people around us, that makes us all weaker. So that generated a short but interesting conversation. It felt like that helped, that specific example helped people think about it a little bit differently. But I said, well, actually, there's another character that I haven't included in this story. Let's meet Kalen. Um, and again, fictional caricatures is probably the best way to say it, or at least as I positioned it, to talk about the values of looking across these worldviews, seeing the gifts, the superpowers of each, and certainly the dark sides of all of those. So this idea of honoring the values of wholeness, and particularly this idea of flow rather than any point in time or any one idea being better. Flow not only in how people move and develop, but how we continue to innovate around us. Um, and again, I'm trying to, as much as I can, even in conversations and meetings I have completely off the subject of SDIs, try to reinforce the value that comes from each of these other worldviews that we as Greens again tend to fight against. But we can have our own problem. You know, even this mindset can have its problems. Um, they didn't get this at all, or it didn't feel like, just in the feedback that I could get on the line. And again, this was a virtual presentation, like we're having now. But then I said, okay, well, here's an attempt that I've made, and I've worked with a lot of communications people, branding people, just amazing superpowers. That, you know, the ability of storytelling can change the world a lot more than a really sophisticated Excel spreadsheet or simulation model. But I said, translating that into your worldview, I've created just kind of a one-page cheat sheet, and even introduced that there's, you know, even before tribal, there is a survival mentality. So I just let them know that you know, when you get into that world, everything's off the table, and it needs to change. But a basic idea, again, this wasn't trying to present this as the answer, but this is a way we could use these lenses to help us improve our ability to not only communicate and connect with our audiences, but help us all move more quickly towards a more sustainable, just, and equitable world. We had a relatively good short, again, conversation about that. Even a little conversation about, well, if this is the case, what messengers should we use? You know, what kind of characters or people would we use as our spokespersons to try to get those across? And wouldn't that be different by each category? So that was a interesting conversation that we had as well. And then I just tried to wrap it up with a closing message that says, you know, if we just stick with this one worldview, um, we're doing as best we can to try to communicate with everyone else, but the way we're doing it risks dividing audiences further. So how do we step back, listen through these many, these different languages, and reshape even how we think about communications and engaging audience. And the point, as I said, and I come from more an engineering, product design, operations, innovation kind of background. I'm outside of my comfort zone here a little bit today, in with you as corporate communications professionals, but the same ideas can apply to how we design anything going forward, our products, our facilities. How do we think and shape corporate culture, and how we lead teams, and I would say is, my tagline behind what I'm hoping to grow, and my ability to see the world through an integral lens is this is about flow. This is about always continuing and to accelerate our learning and creating better way, day in and day out. So after that, we had um, a short conversation. I kind of ran out of my time for this first meeting of the group. I haven't heard any feedback from anyone in that group yet, other than a couple of them did reach out to try to connect via LinkedIn, but I'm still waiting to see where we go forward. So let me just stop right there, right quick, and see your initial reactions, any questions you had. I ran through that relatively quickly. I'll just stop and just ask for comments or questions, your immediate reactions. And Paul, could you facilitate this? Because with the screen up, I'm having trouble seeing folks.
You bet. Yeah. Um, Yeah, I think it would be good to leave the screen up on this for right now, but Barbara, you got your hand up first and then Gail.
This is really good, Jim. I think it's a great way to start. I would add one thing to your previous page of what to stop the heck doing, just based on some interactions I saw between some fanatical green folks and a local community that was unhappy. And so basically the green folks were calling the local community folks ignorant and um, unqualified to make any comments on it, right? And it's like, and then it turned out that the local community folks had found some public information that the green team had studiously ignored, or just been too lazy to look for, right? And
Oh no.
it's, yeah. And so you might just want to add that talking down to and denigrating the other value memes is not only non-productive,
It's
but
destructive.
it's
Yeah.
destructive. Oh gosh, I mean, I'm just looking at this interchange going, guys, not the way to do it.
Yeah. Well, let me just follow up on that right quick. And I've been playing with a Substack, and distributed through LinkedIn and others as well, article for 3 months now, and I've either got to abandon it or push the publish button. But I start with the quote from the Ted Lasso TV series, and I position him as one of the great, philosophers of our time. Quote, "Be curious, not judgmental." That's literally the title of the article, and I'm trying to um, politely prod, my, deep green, hopefully some of us moving into integral worldview, that you are acting, or we are acting like Rupert, the obnoxious, arrogant character of that TV series, and causing as much this damage. So that is a core element of how I'm trying to help at least this movement move forward. But very accurate. It's you can, again, like anything else, once you see that framework in your mind, you finally have that framework. It's one of those paradigm things. All of a sudden you see it everywhere, and it's real,
Right.
and it's destructive. It's not only unproductive, it is destructive, in my view.
Mine too. But excellent work. I think this is a really good place to start.
Thank you, Barbara. Gail, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jim, for the presentation. I was wondering, I don't know how I'm going to put this. If we,
Just to say, I have really thick skin. I am struggling with how to bring this into the world, and how do I even evolve my own thinking right now. So don't try to be polite on anything.
don't worry.
Tell it the way you see
Don't
it.
worry. Don't worry. I'm an ENTJ, so don't worry about that. Um, I was wondering, in marketing, when you want to do an ad,
Mhm.
or any message you want to communicate, it's well known that you have to create a specific message for a specific audience.
Mhm.
And so if you have different audiences, you have to make different ads, and to show these specific ads at the specific places. So not each ad will be placed at the same place. So some can be placed on the TV, some can be placed on Facebook, some can be placed on YouTube, and whatever. So depending on where the audience is and what message, like who they are, basically, because to create an ad, you have to know your audience, who they are, what they like, what they value, where they are, how to communicate with them. So I would think that to cater to different stages of the spiral would be the same thing. You can't create one message that talks to everyone. So it's normal that if they create a product that has some green specificities, it will talk to green and not to orange. But the goal is to talk to green because they are the one who will be interested in the product and who will buy it. So if you try to mix all the stages, no one will be happy and no one will buy. So it works also just for female, male, children, parents. It's you have to really focus on one specific audience, and it's even better if you don't even have different audiences, so you can focus all your money on one audience, because one ad costs a lot of money. So if you want to create one ad for the children, one ad for the adults, one for the women, one for the men, it will cost a lot of money. So I'm thinking maybe we don't need to address every meme all at the same time. It's just, if you talk to a group who is diverse, I don't know how we can communicate in a way that will talk to everyone, because the message will be diluted completely. So
I completely feel what you're what you're saying, and a part of my growing kind of theory is that one of the reasons why values oriented brands now are growing faster than traditional brands is because of the ability to tune a message for an audience that's receptive.
a niche,
Yeah,
a niche.
it's a niche. So these niches are growing because you find your audience, and you can talk the green meme for for organic products, that sort of thing. But also for the reds, for the ultra luxury, super flashy Lamborghini, kind of the crowd. And one got delivered to a baseball player this week. That's why I down the street, so that's why that one came up. But so that's on one side of that. But the flip side is particularly in the U.S., the grief that Bud Light got for some of its DEI related or pride related marketing. It is going to make it is just hard for a mass market brand that's trying to serve all of those. And just to let you know, I've used this as a draft way of trying to get a point across. Go on, come on. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, really quickly, the sustainable brands, where they have unbelievable research about, quote, sustainable brands versus basically anything that's not a sustainable brand. And you can see it in their work that they see that as one kind of homogenous blob of the bad guys.
Yeah.
When in fact one of the things I've shared with some of them is even as you position it, there's all these worldviews happening at once, and understanding the differences even between obviously the moderns and the traditionals. That again can help you understand the audience is different, and at least begin to predict a backlash from some of the messages that you see could really trigger things like Target in the U.S. and Bud Light on the on the pride DEI related issues. I'll stop there, and I can't
Yeah.
tell. I don't know if there's others
Just
that
I was thinking
have their hand up.
maybe if we have a group, maybe we can separate them in different rooms and give them a different message. I don't know.
Yeah,
It would be something to think about, because
yeah.
I never really thought about this
Yeah, I
question.
think your intuition is dead on, though. That's the challenge now is well, at least you can start seeing, you can say like, okay, that's why I just got smacked in the face on that. Okay, at least I can understand where that left hook came from.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Anna, you're next, and then Daryl, and I just put my hand up. I guess I had a comment I wanted to make.
Oh, Daryl, I didn't see
Go
you
ahead,
come on.
Anna.
Great to see you.
Go ahead, Anna.
Go ahead, Anna. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you very much. So my background, I'm not an expert in this. My background is I'm a psychologist and a psychotherapist, and quite sort of psychoanalytically sort of oriented. So obviously a lot of my work is very much about individual, trying to facilitate development in an individual very much from a stage perspective of like what part of the person is 1 year old, what part of the person is 3 year old, and obviously in ourselves because we do our own analysis, right? So we always see all of us always being all these different aspects sort of thing. I have some leadership experience, like a little with like some service management and stuff where I kind of try to, introduce these things in some ways. But yeah, so I just wanted to say I really liked this presentation. I felt it was really intuitively really, it spoke to me how you would like these characters are really introduced really easily. And then I felt like particularly this imagery really showing they're fighting, but once they actually see that they all have something important to contribute, suddenly there is something else happening. I don't know whether there is maybe a scope, particularly, I don't know if your audience is, like you said, you introduced this as at people who were more in the green meme type of presentation or something, that last presentation. So I'm wondering whether, I don't know, there is some kind of scope of adding something like, we can also see this, like, and a lot of people have done therapy these days, particularly of those kind of brackets, or something maybe like a parts of self, like, maybe if we can feel into how we have all aspects of the warrior and this person and that person. I don't know, maybe there could be something that could speak to people in a way that could, I don't know, add to this.
I think I see what you're talking about, and thank you. And in your introduction of yourself, I can't imagine coming from a more 180-degree opposite perspective as a recovering chemical engineer from the oil industry. So thank you for saying that. And I always try to throw in, but don't really know how to effectively communicate the idea that I saw two ideas in what you said. One was trying to let people know that this, people don't sit in these worldviews, in a homogenous way, that once you've understood one view, all of those worldviews are alive in you and can change and be called upon. I just brush over the fact that all of these are alive in not only society that we can see, but in ourselves as well. And would really like to develop a way of communicating that. And your idea of making the link to personal theory and development, and it could be really helpful. I'd love some ideas on how to better understand that myself and communicate that. And I think you're right that Greens are a lot more open to therapy and that than some of the others.
Yeah, I mean, I felt I'm very myself very curious to kind of think about how that can be done. I remember, like, just from if I was in a position of authority like a service manager, and then I would try and kind of create a culture like that, I always felt it seemed to be because I'm the person in authority, and then if I come from that sort of we all have this, including myself, we all have very selfish parts and parts that can't see this and that, somehow it kind of breaks the ice for people to be a bit more compassionate maybe towards themselves. And I don't know. Yeah. So I think maybe there could be something.
Or at least revealing those elements within, if I was speaking within my world, would help others find them in theirs. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because I mean, obviously this is from my own sort of experience where first of all, I am a psychologist. So people go, oh, she's a doctor on this, that. And then I'm the service manager as well. So people would see me. And then counterintuitively, often that sort of professional, obviously from what people might be used to, might present themselves as the superior one, as the one who has sorted everything, who has,
Oh.
But if I basically introduce it as, of course, I hold a position of authority because I'm your boss, like I am this, and I am saying what we're going to do now. But it's like I opened from the beginning with that sort of the stance is like, and I will obviously introduce a developmental psychology model because this is where I come from. So I would basically say it's like we all have been babies at some point, and we have been 3-year-olds and we have been 5-year-olds. And our current research, so that's the orange, right, says that these things are very much active in all of ourselves. So how we're going to work with this is we're all like trying to, then I create a program of like that opens people to that over some months or something. But like starting with that, speaking from authority, but with this kind of self-compassion of course, I'm a toddler too in lots of different ways, in many, and that kind of seems to warm people, and kind of people lose the fear of being judged or told off or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, really quickly, one of the audience that was in the age I would expect that she could have, from 0 to 5-year-old children. She brought up the idea, well, wouldn't this apply even to children developing? I didn't even mention that. I was just talking about, adult different worldviews. And I
Yeah.
said, well, as a matter of fact, that's where some of this came from. Here's one draft chart I've been using to help communicate that to others. And those, and I just said, your intuition nailed. I mean, you're right on. There is this parallel in this theory. So reach out to me and I'll try to direct you to it, but I haven't heard back to her, just as an example. But yeah, okay. Yeah, trying to figure out how to bring that in the conversation, I think could be helpful, and I am all ears on how to do that.
Thank you, Alan. Good questions. Daryl, go ahead.
Yeah, a great presentation.
Oop, Daryl, you went dark on us.
Like that.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
you're back.
Sorry, yeah, I was trying to. Yeah, I'm on my phone. I'm not on my computer right now. But anyway, I appreciate the presentation. Thank you so much. And my thoughts go to my own experience. I was the leader in the organization of a couple thousand people, and we were having to roll out various change programs from time to time, and which is how I got involved with Spartanemics from the get-go.
Ah,
And what I found very similar to, I love the way you use the characters, because people could quickly identify themselves with the human character, as opposed to an abstract chart showing spirals and everything. I found it's always useful when you can ground it the way you did, and it's very useful. But what I did, I tell you, because based on who you're speaking to, what the purpose of the branding communication is and such, I was trying to roll out a program for process improvement called Lean Six Sigma.
I'm
And
very familiar with it. Yeah.
yeah,
I
it's
got
a very
a few
specific
books on
set
my
of
shelf.
right. And everybody in an organization is like of about 2,000 people, just one might really care about it. The other 20 people go, "What the hell is this?" Right? So it's not always, as Gail pointed out, and I don't, Gail points are very valid, but I don't resonate from an organizational point of view. Yes, if you're trying to sell Tide in the marketplace and you want to go to a demographic, a regional area, you might communicate Tide differently on channels in
Certainly.
Mississippi, Louisiana, and Florida and
Mhm.
such, as opposed to the Pacific North. You might want to change your ad a little bit, but
Oh,
many times people don't have that luxury. You can do that these days. You could differentiate and micro market these days sophisticatedly, so to speak, with social media and such. You could segment the market up like that. But in an organization communication where we're speaking to all hands, showing up so that we could roll out a brand new program, I can't just stay on message about green. Like let's say,
yeah.
like we had one issue where we had a revolt at the organization because the decision was made by the executive to remove all water fountains or water. When you put the bottled water on top of the thing, I don't know what you call that. But basically, where in break rooms there were water, uh, 5-gallon jugs you put on top of the thing and you get your water, right?
Yeah.
Well,
The water cooler idea. Yeah.
water cooler, right. So
Yeah.
so we had water coolers. This is a real world situation. We had water coolers throughout the organization, and the decision was made after an IG inspection. This was a military base. Basically said, there's no reason why you cannot use the water that's coming from the water plant in the city.
Yeah.
And this is a waste of government money, yada, yada, yada. Well, I mean, you could imagine there was a whole lots of different points of view on this, right? And so the point is that when we communicate like you did with the folks sitting around the campfire, you
Mhm.
can't always assume everybody in the room, 80% of them are green or 25% of them are red. So what we did to open up people to the possibility of what they're about to hear. I had like 10 minutes to do this on
Wow.
stage, right? And in 10 minutes, what I used was music, right?
Huh.
To hit the same points you made with your caricatures, which I think was a great idea. I also had a skit done where I actually filmed the skit and played it, where you had all the characters. Imagine all your caricatures. I put them in a modern day setting, though, where
Yeah.
the typical Spiral Dynamics caricatures, but they had a
Yeah.
conversation.
Mhm.
And the conversation, much like the last person who pointed out, saying, "Well, I'm sitting in authority, yada yada yada." So there was no one in authority. Everyone spoke from the point of view of the value system in this skit, but you could tell quickly that Yellow. Every time Yellow made a comment, it was trying to integrate all the different points of views.
There you go.
Red was obstinate and angry, yada yada. So you could see very clearly all those conversations happening in context of one thing. And so I found, rather than presume that I kind of have a sense, I live in Southern California, most people here are going to be green or orange or something. Rather than presume what the makeup of the audience is with 2,000 people, I had to hit each meme. So I played a song for each one of them in that 10 minutes. And for instance, I played Bad to the Bone for Red. I don't know
There
if
you
you
go.
know the song Bad to the
Oh,
Bone.
oh, yeah, really well.
Right, right. For Orange, I played Money, Money, Money. Right.
Yeah.
Most people at this base was somewhere between 40 and I mean, you had a few young folks, but like most people could identify from songs
Right.
from the 80s.
Imagine for the green, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Exact song for the green. That's the exact song we played. Imagine. That's the song we played, right? I'm dating myself here. They'd probably pick a whole different playlist today, which
Amazing
is
Grace for the
okay.
blue. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, which one for Blue?
Amazing Grace. I don't something else.
I can't remember what I did for Blue, but that would have been perfect though.
Oh, it's a
But you
beautiful
get
idea. Yeah.
you get the point. And
And what
honestly,
for yellow? What
uh,
songs?
I did not play Yellow. I did I in the skit. Yellow was in the skit, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't have a song for Yellow at the time. But I did have Yellow represented when I showed them the skit of all the different values talking to one another. That's a good question, Gail. I didn't play a Yellow song. Didn't have one for that
What
because
what what color? What song would you choose now if you had to for yellow?
I believe I can fly. I think. I'm not sure though.
Oh, really?
That's my quick answer. Without
That
thinking.
might be
Yeah,
fun to think about.
that's fine.
I'd love to
Yeah,
hear people's ideas
yeah,
on that.
yeah.
But
But
then
anyway,
I love what you're talking about. I've actually done, not specifically with that,
Mhm.
with showing the five characters, but in
Mhm.
other cases, I've literally used fairy tale like formats, classic heroes' journeys to um, on stages of big events to try to get those ideas across. But that's great about certainly adding songs. Man, that's a super idea. One quick thing that I'll just, before I forget it, because I'm starting to forget things, but in response to some of the things that you mentioned, um, early in my work, even within this company, pretty innovative company I was working for, I started seeing this, pushback of the traditional worldview, and that has adapted my entire approach, whether I'm a sustainability officer for a company or working as a consultant now, is to always balance what we have to change with the demonstrated strengths of an organization that we should fight like hell to never let change. So you balance that, or at least that's in my theory, and it seems to have been helpful to say there are these special elements of what allowed us to be successful and exist today, that are precious. And as we see the world in different ways, and we know that things are changing, we must change. to continue to thrive. But at the same time, there are things about us that we should fiercely hold on to not let change. And that's again another one of the ways that over the years I've tried to adapt ways without using the SDI theory and language and all of that to bring in some of the ideas. Anyway, I'll
Well, you
just
know,
popped up into my mind. Yeah.
I do the same thing, Jim. The methodology I used is called appreciative inquiry. And when you're dealing
Oh,
with large, right? When you're dealing with
I'm
large, huh?
deep into that one and know David Cooper Ryder really well. He's a
Yes. So
right.
that his method, is what I use, because in a large organization, people set point is to go no. I mean, everybody thinks the answer is no because they actually don't have the authority to say yes and no. Most people only have authority to say no,
Yeah.
and as a result,
Use it.
it's very useful to go in with a constructive, positive setup.
Yeah.
And appreciative inquiry, as you know, and anime know this. I mean, because it comes from organizational psychology kind of point of view. I think,
Really.
as you go into an inquiry, trying to figure out what you're going to do about change, it's good to acknowledge the positive core, so that they're already happy when you introduce this new thing. But anyway, I'll shut up here.
No, that's good. I'll zip you something of a whole AI summit that I did even for the company that I work for that was transformative. But anyway,
Oh, that would be great.
we're getting
Yeah.
off another track we could go down for hours probably. Again, I can't see who's there if there's any other hands, so I'm not trying to shut you up. I'll stop. Anyone
Thank you.
else out there in queue?
Yeah, thank you,
Oh,
Derek. Yeah, I'll go ahead. I've got a couple questions. Well, mostly a couple comments. I guess first of all, really great presentation. The core approach and core message is right on. I don't really have any criticisms or even any 30,000-foot level comments. You really hit it really well. I'm glad you did the presentation. I know you'd sent me the copy, like a 1 or 2 page summary copy, and I had a hard time not really deciphering it, but
Oh, is this the
yeah, I had a
it's
really
not
hard time
judgmental
even,
article? Yeah.
yeah, it was really, I had a hard time really responding to it even because it was so 30,000 foot that it's like, ugh. But anyway, this is really great. A couple of comments, very specific. I think, I guess I'll reemphasize it. I think that a message like this to corporate marketing communication people can be very beneficial because we now do have, or they have marketing alternatives to mass marketing. With social media, with things like Roku, there are tools and marketing methods that really allow, in ways that were not possible even 20 years ago, for a company that's trying to mass market to do it in a more segmented way. And I'll just leave that at that. In terms of, you had your archive slides, I would definitely add your sustainable versus unsustainable slide,
Okay.
or versus sustainable versus unsustainable brand slide, because that really, once you pull that up, and
Okay. Again, I did this literally the night before the presentation because I was still struggling with this idea and how to communicate it to
yeah,
this group because
and
it was so clear they saw it just as totally binary. There's us
yeah,
good guys and those dumb guys, and not gender specific, and
yeah,
didn't see the 5 different worlds. They just saw us and them.
right. And I think that this this particular slide really emphasizes and gets directly at the in a sense that the problem that any, for instance, somebody who a communications marketer or person would, that whether their worldview is centered in green or whether it's centered in orange or wherever, this slide really gets to the core weakness that they have of viewing their brand from their worldview and then looking at every other worldview as unsustainable, and this really does get them to, instead of looking at being binary, you have to look at it from 5 different standpoints. I think that's perfect. Not that I'm trying to create work for you, but this slide, this presentation was, my understanding of it is that you're presenting it from the your audience were marketing people, communications people who were in themselves more postmodern, more green oriented.
To the extreme. I mean,
Yeah.
the needle would be really,
It'd be
really deep in the green. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be really interesting to see this same presentation presented when your audience was orange centered. And the reason I think that is I think there's probably, if you're looking at generating more business, there's probably way more orange centered marketing communications people out there than there are green centered.
Yeah. Well, by the way, the size of those bottom 5 are roughly proportional to the best data I could have on the U.S. population. So yeah, the modern is clearly the biggest bucket.
The other thing, and this is going to be somewhat of a controversial comment. So I don't know that it's sustainable, but I would drop the yellow in the presentation at all.
Mm.
And the reason I say that is, okay, well, before I say the reason, I think the concepts of yellow, that integral, the strengths that an integral approach brings to any argument or brings to any endeavor are, I think they can sustain themselves in and of themselves without having to necessarily identify them in as yellow.
I struggled with, I mean, struggled is, yeah, that's probably the right word.
Yeah.
You could almost tell by the way I even framed the presentation that putting yellow in was an afterthought.
Right.
Because in the the 92nd version of the parable, with that, and I'm happy if anybody's interested to share with this group a much longer, much longer. It's still a very short story, classic hero's journey, 5 journeyers. But
Right.
again, in that the point at the end is they were all seeking a master, but they realized the strengths are all within ourselves. So it tries to contrast, almost say that we don't need a yellow master. If we see the values in each other. So that's where I was trying to go with that idea. But in this presentation at the end, I put it in. But I take that and I'll probably with that feedback perhaps pull that out of future presentations.
Yeah.
I did find my screen and I see Anna smiling there. So I'd be appreciative of her feedback.
Well, again, I guess that's really all I had. But again, great presentation, and I definitely want to email me a copy of the presentation. We got Daryl up, we got Gail up, but Marjorie, you're kind of there in the middle. You haven't had a chance to speak yet. So Marjorie, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for a really great presentation. I'm doing one next week, and mine probably pales in comparison to what you've presented there. I really love your presentation with the slides and everything. Good job. Yeah, so in terms of the yellow, I was curious about if you did include it, to include that yellow is not an end, there's no endpoint, that there's something beyond yellow, and that from the yellow perspective, everything is true and partial. So even yellow itself recognizes that its own worldview can only be partial. So I don't know how you would fit that into, if you would even put that into the presentation, but I guess just how you're coming at it yourself as a presenter from an integral perspective, recognizing that there's always going to be more and something beyond what I can't see it and from my own worldview, especially in the times that we're in with the uncertainty. So, because I think that your audience, any audience today, is probably living an experience of great uncertainty all around us.
Mhm.
And so to try to attach ourselves to any particular plan or presentation or worldview or anything that's going to present itself as this is the latest and greatest answer to our problems, is probably going to most likely be received with skepticism. And I think that would probably be a healthy response in today's world, to really tap into that uncertainty. We're in such liminal spaces right now that it would be very difficult to try to put forward something that presents itself as being an answer to a problem these days. I'm wondering what your thoughts might be on that.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I did have the great professional fortune to work with an outrageous character. This guy named Ray Anderson. There's actually on Amazon and on like Google Play, there's a feature-length documentary on his work and my work at Interface called Beyond Zero. So if you have any of those services and have interest, you can check that out. So search for Beyond on Zero. But even from him and the founding of this company, by the way, it took this, guy that grew up in a rural Georgia town 17 years to form a company and be in the Fortune 500. So a decent entrepreneur that had this complete epiphany of the existence of green out of orange, and then very quickly, integrated that into what I would describe as an integral, worldview that at times would get really frustrated and forceful in reaction to the negatives of green and the negatives of orange. But anyway, the point is, from our work then, I've tried to embody that exact idea that you're talking about, even in my kind of emerging tagline of "There's always a better way." I mean, it's this idea that we're in flow, and the next greatest thing is only just going to be great until somebody comes up with a better way, and that's how we create and achieve the potential of an individual or my neighborhood or my company or society, is recognize and always be seeking that next better way. So how to express that? I'm struggling with how to express the power in feeling the power of flow, if that makes sense. I can tell I'm struggling with how to communicate that, but I think that at least the thought that I heard you express is, I think, a powerful element that could help others find the path too. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Marjorie. I'm just going to go in the order now. Daryl, then Gail, then Barbara.
Okay, am I on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Just a lot of good thoughts that hit me. And I wasn't sure, but it seems like this presentation you might be sharing with another group, or have you already shared it, Jim? Or
Yeah, I already shared it last week
Okay.
with a group of about 8. Again, these would be mid-level communication professionals in very large,
Right.
multinational corporations. Yeah.
All right. So I completely, resonate with everybody's comment and complimenting you, but I have a couple of pushbacks.
Please.
For instance, I'm more of a purist, probably along the lines of Barbara. I'm in the spiral dynamics integral camp fully, And although I appreciate all the various other developmental theories and all that, they're just not my cup of tea. I have nothing to say about them. But I believe because the essential elements of spider dynamics origins have to do with the analysis and studies of adult human behavior. I think aligning that last column you had on one of your slides with children, I just think is off message.
Off message.
Yeah, it's just it does. It runs the risk of going down a rabbit hole. But that's just a thought. It's just a thought. I can't make anything wrong, but that's just my thought on that. Is find some other way of explaining what those differences are. But that's a small thing. The other
Yeah,
thing,
well, I agree. Real quickly, I agree with that, and had just put that at the back of the
yeah,
of the deck, and only flashed it up momentarily when that other person made that connection. So,
yeah,
I
yeah.
completely agree with you. I did not. That was not part of the normal presentation.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And then the slide that Paul pointed out that was very useful, where you had sustainability advice, the non-sustainability. Here's the thought I got that occurred to me on that is that bottom line, and you probably know this as most folks who are familiar with the theory
Not
and
necessarily.
framework, right, is that
You know,
we are all admixtures of
yes.
various things. Nobody's just green, or if I'm interfacing with a group of people, I might be more green that day than other days where I'm more red or something. My point is, there we are all made up of admixtures of these various value systems that come to the fore when we need to, based on the dynamic interaction going on in the moment. And so that slide really is a good slide. However, I think to make the sustainable vice non-sustainable green and blue, so that one of the value systems underneath, which is a wholly green, just kind of leaves me cold in that if you had those five value systems represented under the two others, first off, the green, the sustainable brands, vice unsustainable brands, I would find a more neutral thing, gray or something else. But but you could do a lot with you can get creative with this slide, I think, because it almost suggests to me that, and this is real nitpicky, that
Please.
the only people who got identified with sustainable brands are egalitarian folks. Everybody else just kind of missed the boat. Whereas you could have represented the modern as being somewhat a little blue, a little purple, a little, so on and so forth. To show folks nobody's just one thing. And there's something for everybody in things. And then the other comment I wanted to make was on just what to do with yellow. Like when Gail asked me, and I told her, well, I really didn't have a song for yellow. And I think, the reason was because of my indoctrination with Don Beck was, you come in working at subsistence levels first,
Mhm.
and the solution provider in the room, vis-a-vis yellow, right, really is a stealth effort. And these days, I count it more as wizardry, right? And
Mhm.
so the yellow wizard in your parable, I think is a great parable. If it was possible to give a role to yellow, they would be a wizard coming from outer space, or all of a sudden, folks in the parable realize, oh, we're under a spell. Anyway, just playing around with your caricatures, it's difficult to give yellow a seat at the fire there without it becoming the dominant, obvious, well, this is the thing that we all should do type of thing. Whereas to
Yeah.
me, it
I must
maybe
learn how
lends,
to do that. Yeah.
yeah, it lends itself more to a wizard kind of role. But anyway, I was just thinking because, the presentation was so concrete, this is the kind of thing I really enjoy about spiral dynamics is when it becomes more concrete and less abstract and theoretical, which you did a great job representing concreteness. But anyway, you could always play around with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Thank you. And I will, through Paul, I'll share a link to this other draft story. And again, it's probably a 2-minute read. So, it's really short, but even in that, kind of the two things, and maybe for Anna, oh, we may have lost her.
She's there.
But there is, you'll see the characters if you get a chance to read it. It's a traveler that comes through this town that has 5 watchtowers. It's a different kind of metaphor for the
Mm.
different perspectives, and he ends up bringing a mirror for everyone to look through. And when everyone thinks that they're going to see their strengths, the warrior see his power when he looks at it, and he looks through the mirror and it sees destruction.
He's the shadow, huh?
Yeah, he sees the point is he sees the shadow.
Yeah, interesting.
Instead of what he expected to see as the strength. And for each of
That's
the characters, but it involves this idea of self-understanding as well as there are Gandalfs amongst us that can
right.
help us see. They're not going to try to impose it on you, but they just help unveil that and facilitate, and that's the role of the journey. And I'll say again, as a recovering chemical engineer, this is something I've created in partnership with my new friends. Multiple AI tools that I've used, and I've had fun. By the way, just on the side, is bouncing some of these stories back and forth between different tools and see how they add their flavor to it. So it's not 100% me, but as always, you're the one that directs whatever comes out of it. So I'll share that with you, Paul, to distribute as the team likes.
Yeah, thank you. Gail, you're up next.
Thank you. I wanted to say something first before saying what I wanted to say. It's a little bit a little critic to Darrell because
Okay.
Darrell, you don't attend the presentations, and because you sleep, oversleep, or I don't know, but it's fine. But then you comment on things that you haven't seen, and so your comments sometimes are a bit misplaced, like not really proper uh, or relevant. But I'm just saying.
Well,
So,
but actually, this one I saw the whole thing pretty much.
oh, okay.
Okay.
Because
So
then,
give us give me feedback on the approach of the presentation, and particularly just to let you know, I want to get some. Oh, I missed it. I want to get some help on this thing here. How do we reveal the dark sides of a meme when that's the dominant view in somebody's mind? But please go ahead, Gail.
okay, so I agree with Paul. It's best not to talk about yellow when we talk to an audience that is mostly orange, because they are too far away and they can't conceive the yellow, and also because their next step is not yellow, it's green. So you have an audience of orange people, obviously you'll talk to them in an orange way with an opening to green, like something that can open their mind a little bit toward green. And also in your presentation, it was for green people, but you didn't even talk about yellow. So yeah.
Well, there was a whole slide on yellow, Kaylin, or something like that was the character.
Yeah, in the end, yeah, but you said you didn't present them yellow. Did you?
Well, I purposely didn't use the color designations, but my attempt was to use the caricatures, and their descriptions would be relatively faithful to the first five, and then Kaylin was integral. And I may not have been fully integral because I may not be fully yet integral, if that makes sense. I wouldn't know how to present it if I don't have that mindset, theoretically, right?
Yeah, but you see, it made me think of what I said at the beginning. You had an audience that was mostly green, and so
Absolutely.
you addressed your message in a green way. Because if you had not catered to this specific audience, they would not have listened to you, or they wouldn't have get the message. They wouldn't have got the message. So I'm just thinking, you see, you did it on your own. Even before I talked, you targeted you targeted your audience. Like you created a message, like a presentation that was really talking to green people. So
Yes,
I think
I knew that
it's
was my
great.
audience. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was great. So I think it gives um a kind of a proof, or not necessarily a proof. That's not what I'm trying to find, but it gives a reason. It gives another reason for my uh, my initial comment, that you need to cater to the audience. But it's actually really a great challenge to figure out how we can talk to everyone at the same time. Like there are moments like in the company where you have to talk to everyone and they are not at the same stage, but at the same time we are in orange companies, and so the boss is telling what you have to do, and even though you're not orange, you have to do what the boss tells you. So the boss will speak in an orange way, and if you don't get it, that's well, we don't care about your your thoughts. You're paid to do what we tell you to do, and it works. So I'm not saying that it's great. It
Yeah.
works.
Well, really quickly, from a OD internal change management standpoint, other than this idea of pairing what we must change with what we must work hard to not let change, that idea I set forth before. The other idea that I think is going where you're heading is, I've always tried to position the power of the big story of the company as one thing, but making it real is helping everyone see the power of their individual story in achieving that big story. And that each individual story comes from their personal strengths and the role that they play in the company. So I'm just taking that further, that I could potentially even further integrate at least in my own way of thinking about it and presenting it to others, integrate again, the superpowers of each of the worldviews as how we define how an accountant calculating accounts payable, how they play and what are the superpowers needed for that, and why order and structure and hierarchy and verification is critical, or how Orange, I mean, literally, innovation R&D folks, or the boldness of a salesperson, how the red thing. And I'm thinking out loud and taking everyone's time, but I like what you said, and that's another area I've considered, but with your words, I can take it further, or support, or whatever, concurrence.
Well, that's great that you can talk your thoughts. Like that's why we're here in some way.
Yeah.
So don't worry to talk about what's coming to your mind. Just like it helps you understand things. I'm like that too. So I need to speak things so I can understand them.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Leah. Barbara, you're next, and then Marjorie.
There she is.
I'm here, Kip. First of all, since Daryl popped me up as a expert, I'm actually going to totally disagree with him on children.
Oh, interesting.
But I approach it in a different way. So, when somebody asks about children, I will say all of this is about what happens to you at adolescence and on. It's not about early childhood development, the sort of things that Piaget does. However, we all know, if we've been parents or if we've worked with children, how very much different dealing with a 3-year-old is than dealing with a 5-year-old, dealing with an 8-year-old. So we do see those developmental differences. We know they're real in humans. And one of the reasons that Piaget stopped is because as we grow older, there's no longer a narrow time frame for that development. And so right. And so what happens is we all know teenagers that we call almost wise elders, and we all know elders that are nothing but an overgrown adolescent. We all know that, right? And so yes, you can think about child development because it's something you can see and you know, but we're talking about what happens only at adolescence and on when we look at this. You know, I love the idea of never ending, right? And I'm thinking, I don't use yellow. And the reason I don't is, I think I've heard it from Marjorie, I've heard it from Gail, it's too limited, right? And so integral is a good term. I mean, it's a good soundbite term, right? When I first heard it from Ken, it's like, oh, duh, you know, that word makes sense. And so, and you can just define it as moving on to further stages and make it plural because it's a never-ending quest. That begin to concentrate on integrating and making healthy all the earlier stages. And so you can talk about it like that. So maybe the wizard can just be the integral wizard, right? That tries to put it all together, to look at it from multiple perspectives. All of those things sound good with green. And sometimes if I have a green group, occasionally I'll lob a red tennis ball into the middle of it and say, you know, I don't hear you walking the talk as far as paying attention to multiple perspectives and of all these early. Yeah. And so tell us, you know, give me an example of when you've done that. And it's really interesting because the examples are all, you know, sort of standard green things, and then the groups of people that they leave out who they can't see a perspective on are humongous, right? I like the mirror. I do think, you know, and maybe not in a first presentation, but I do think the idea of the sort of the integral wizard at showing you the mirror, and it's not your best self. It's you from hell, right? I mean, and all of the worst things that you do, and you know, I found that perspective very helpful. I know when I first did the Myers-Briggs, looking at the failings of my type, right? It was like, oh gosh, I resemble that, right?
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and that aha, particularly for green, I think that's a good aha, because green likes to think of itself as so open, and yet, you know, none of us get there. I mean, it's an integral thing to not a green thing to get to really appreciate, even when you roll your eyes at them, to nevertheless appreciate and love the multiple perspectives. And you asked for a methodology on looking at the shadow. So one that comes from
well, specifically, how do you I'll just say it, the words that are coming out of my mouth. How do you lovingly almost provide that mirror to a group that when you see a group is just dominated by picket, you know, in this case it was deep green, but orange,
you know,
blue,
it's
red,
interesting.
whatever.
The IT people have a concept called failure camp. And back in 2009, when the city of Houston was just in shambles, right? We did a couple of those, and we would have blue, orange, and green people in them. And what we talked about is that, because when you talk about your failures, you're talking about your shadow in a lot of cases, right?
Hmm.
And to talk about it with other people who've had similar failures and they didn't die, that they haven't been drummed out of the community, right? But we honestly talked about having our failures, and I will tell you that's a conversation that Green needs to have all the time, and especially with blue and orange in the room, to look at the commonality of the things we just do wrong over and over again, right? Whether it's marrying your father or marrying your mother 5 times after divorces, going back to Anne's thing, there we all know that, and so talking about it in a group when it's not a nasty thing, it just is, right?
Just
It's what
not judgmental.
it just
Yeah.
is. It's what's happened to us, and it's a completely open forum where we can admit it
Well,
to each other.
I like that. In the past, what again, this Ray and I, we played with these ideas and figured out how to put them in place. And one of the ideas that came to our mind, and I don't know if this is theoretically accurate or not, it's like the goal is to not only understand the mindsets behind the systems, but be able to consciously, walk between systems. So the issue is the
Yes,
mindset. The issue is the system, not judging the person. Is
right, and to
step
walk
one.
between systems, right?
Is to be able to consciously
Yeah,
choose to step between systems and then be able to access, the
and in a loving and
opportunity.
accepting way, not in Attila the Hun, the warrior way, because often what happens with all of the stages is you think you have to walk into another system, and your diagram did it perfectly. You had Orange there sort of shaking his fists and stuff, because that's often what happens to us when we walk into another system. We feel pulled into the warrior mode. I see Green feel pulled into the more blue mode of, no, we're just going to tell you fools how this is, right?
Yeah.
Since you can't see it for yourself, we're going to be commanding and controlling. So that's an interesting aspect too.
We're going to impose that hierarchy and the what's the moral authority of the universal truths of blue. Yeah, I see the pattern. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not an uncommon pattern. So there, that you can't do in a short presentation, but that's the kind of thing that could be done in like a long study group and I've never tried to do a failure camp on Zoom. We've always done it in person because, I mean, somehow that neurophysiology of people in the room commiserating with you on, oh gosh, me too, oh, don't bring that up, right? And then we can say, and the idea that we all do it, right? I don't know how that plays out on Zoom. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Thanks, Barbara. Marjorie,
Nice
go ahead.
job.
Yeah, to your question about how do you present the dark side of people to themselves or something like that. I think it's a tricky one because I think there's a distinction or a discernment between the shadow side and the dark side. The shadow to me implies what's hidden, what we cannot see. But the dark side can be pure evil and something to be protected against. I think how you would present it would be to help people see within themselves they have all the previous levels. Like at Green, for example, you can't be at Green unless you have transcended and included all the other previous levels. So tapping into that beige instinct for fight or flight or freeze, or their survival instinct is important, because when you're confronted with evil, someone is out to destroy you, you don't necessarily want to come at them with a green vulnerability and share your shadow to them, and try to heal, do the shadow work around something or an entity or some group of people that will take that vulnerability and use it against you, and will harm their intent, the evil intent. And I don't even believe in a separate entity necessarily of a separate God or a separate entity of the devil or anything like that. But I do believe that there is such a thing as pure evil that exists in the world, and that is to be protected against. And we can learn a lot from that, from our own tapping into our own traditional blue and purple. The purple was very good about rituals of protection,
Yes.
and I think we need to use that today. And this is part of what the resistance movement is about. In the U.S. and the politics, is to actually recognize and put the mirror up to the evil.
Yeah.
And but also when you're putting a mirror up, like when you're pointing a finger, you've got three fingers pointing back at yourself. So you really have to be careful when you're trying to show someone else their shadow side.
Yeah.
It's
That's why I
it's
asked
a
the
tough one.
question, how?
It's a tough one. Because what's the intention? Is the intention to make someone wrong, or is the intention to bring healing and health and stability and sustainability and all those positive qualities? So and it's
But
probably a both and, but it's a tricky one.
it's so, I'll just use the term, it's so integral into theory. How do you not, you know, yeah, how do you talk about it without people feeling like you're being judgmental at them?
Hmm.
Per Personally, that's the challenge I continue to have. And I also notice, I don't know that we've heard from Dustin. So when we're done, Marjorie, Paul, I don't know if you mind, or Galen, we jump to Dustin.
I was going to say,
Yeah, Justin's fine. I can wait. He hasn't talked yet, so.
Yeah, first of all, is that complete your thought, Marjorie? I know we
Just
cut
one
you
more
off.
thing that I
Please.
wanted to say. One more thing
Yeah.
was that when we are trying to work with groups of people, or even just within our own families or whatever, I think other people, I know speak for myself, I can tell when someone is trying to manipulate me,
Mm,
or when someone has a hidden agenda, or they're trying to show me something, but they don't want to just come directly and tell me. They're going to use a metaphor, they're going to,
mm.
and in a way that can be, it depends on the person and on the intention, but that can be a form of manipulation. And so I think it really, for me, I have to search my own self. What is my intention in trying to point out something to someone else? Because if I haven't done it within my own self, then it's very, very easy for it to slip into a negative, pointing fingers at, rather than coming from an equal place of compassion and all of that, so that's all I wanted to say.
So really quickly, just the thought that comes to my mind, if, and I'm just thinking, I'm selfish right now because I'm trying to be more effective in this. If I translate maybe the, examples of the, we'll just say unhealthy previous worldviews from my experience in what I have done or done to others, that could reduce that perhaps that could reduce that danger of people taking it as being manipulative.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and also to see that healthy and unhealthy is a spectrum,
Yeah,
and there can be a fine line to discern between what is healthy and what's unhealthy.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Mhm.
thank you, Marjorie. Dustin, go ahead.
Hey, I really appreciated your presentation and what you're doing here. I wanted to say, I wrote down notes of what I wanted to say. First thing off the top of my head is that I agree that the way you're presenting the stages in general is a really good idea. Like, There was an earlier presentation in this group, it was months ago now. It was like schools that give a fuck that similarly displayed, like this man was explaining the types to school boards and to like groups of teachers in schools, and to show like different approaches to teaching, like different basic dispositions to it. And it was stages, and it worked that people could all identify with those different approaches to things, because it seems like just a single abstraction is a way that basically everyone in these communities can understand. And I say it that way because I was going to ask if you'd ever heard of Michael Common's model of complexity, model of hierarchical complexity.
Nope.
Okay. I think that's going to be your ticket, in a way, because that is a it's an attempt to rigorously ground stages in general in mathematics and info science principles. And it's completely abstract, task-based, complexity-based, and it builds the stages in a pretty objective way by its standards. And it doesn't have any judgment to it whatsoever. It's literally just tasks. Like, and every kind of task, from like a things that amoebas can do to things that cockatiels can do, to things that only so-called adults in Piaget's view can do.
It's
Like
like
it really
something we did talk about just a few weeks ago.
yeah, it's kind of been mentioned around here. I got it started again, and I'm proud of that.
Can you say it
Um,
again? Because I can't see the chat or anything right now.
Got you.
Right.
Yeah, look, Google model of hierarchical complexity. And if you look up Michael Commons on Google Scholar, you'll see a lot of stuff on it.
Commons.
Yeah, I could actually link you. Let me get on my laptop. I can link you a pretty good introductory paper. But yeah, that's the move, I think. Like, I don't, it'll take some thought and a bit of creativity, I think, to very easily and intuitively explain it to people, because it is mathematics. Like, the examples that are given in the papers are grounded specifically in mathematics. And so like Gail was asking me for a more concrete explanation, because it doesn't just roll. It isn't the most intuitive thing for a lot of people, but I think it could be explained in a way that's really interesting, and
Mhm.
that builds the stages in a way that doesn't even look like a person. You know, it's nothing anyone's identifying with.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, and then like you're just doing it, and it's also important because this might complicate the kind of presentation you'd have to give, but appreciating that, okay, I'll put it this way. Hansi Freinacht, the kind of duo author pseudonym, in the Listening Society, put forth a way of measuring stage that is kind of like expressed of four different things in a person. Um, so like kind of an average of their code, which is what we would often describe as their stage, at least from what they express, but also their complexity. Literally, like the model of hierarchical complexity, the level of complex coordination of tasks that they are capable of and that they regularly perform. And that is literally the complexity with which they perceive and understand the world. And it can be really important to understand. There are two more attributes, by the way. Like, there's how they're doing basically, and how deep they are, like how much contact they have with reality. All of those things, like an average of them, seem to affect how a person shows up in the world effectively at a given time. Their effective value meme. I imagine that can literally change with a person's mood during the day, and that's kind of what they mean. But um, basically, to appreciate that code, like, so yes, like a person's cultural signifiers, like people that would, as an example, people that would show up as what we would call woke, that would easily be branded as green, and I think are very easily and like in a way that bothers me because having seen like enough of these, like some of these people are my friends, and I know a variety of them, like stage wise, but they have the same moral signifiers. And it's kind of important to understand that, um, yeah, marketing wise, it might work to shoot at buckets like that, like cultural buckets like that. But personally, like a person preaching a certain symbol set, a certain moral value, like the code of green, isn't necessarily them working at that level of development in like a meaningful way. Like they aren't seeing the world from that level of complexity, from having really integrated orange already, you know? Like,
Yeah, fascinating. Good.
yeah, that's
I'll
real.
look at,
And
I'll look into that because that seems to be congruent with a lot of this other stuff, if that's the right word.
yeah, it definitely is. And it has interesting correlations with Suzanne Cook-Greuter's stages of ego development. When you look at like, I've been thinking a lot about the conformist stage lately, because I've realized that there are conformists through all of these cultural buckets.
Hmm.
And like it accounts for like really bizarre behavior. You would not believe the near bloodshed there has been over children's cartoons. Because people like that is like they go home and they're online and that is their community straight up. And that is like their measure of conformity. And like these manifest as strange Twitter communities, and you can see the same things politically.
Yeah,
And
I can definitely see that conformity, but even furthermore, purity to like elevate yourself in the hierarchy within that code. If that makes any
yeah,
sense. Yeah.
and all of these people think they're the same by cultural group because they don't know anything about stage. And you can imagine that makes a lot of movements really awkward in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Um, it's just a lot to think about and account for. Anyway,
Yeah.
appreciate what
Thank
you're
you.
doing here. I hope some of this has been helpful. I'll link you some papers.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay.
Just a little administrative injection in here. Anna, if you would put your email address, Dustin did do a presentation on this. Dustin was what, 3 weeks ago, maybe? Um,
About that.
um, I can
Yeah, I
send
think it
you,
sounded familiar. I just thought like I have seen this somewhere, so this
yeah,
must have been your thing. Yeah.
I think
I'll
I
send you my email.
saw that.
if
I
you
think I
can,
was on that.
And
I missed the last
it's
two
even
weeks.
on Facebook now because I published it on Facebook on the Integral Live,
Nice.
not Integral, SDI Live
Okay.
channel.
I get it there. Cool.
okay, okay, yeah, okay, thank you. I mean, I'll get this down. I can send you a copy of the presentation or a link. Daryl, you had a coffee cup up. That's kind of old nomenclature, but yeah, I think you
Yeah,
wanted to.
no, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I wanted to say something earlier, something that Jim pointed out, which I'm familiar with. I could think the guy you were talking about, Jim, and I've used it in training sessions I've done, was the guy with the carpet company, right?
Yeah, that's Interface, Ray Anderson. That's where
Yeah,
I was
I
shoulder to
yeah.
shoulder with Ray for 20 years.
Yeah, I think, I use it as a great, and I think you're right, it's a great example of the transitioning of orange, green into yellow. I think he's the caricature himself of
Yeah.
how it is to evolve to yellow naturally. So I use that, and I used one from the Adhesus Institute as two examples of integral, holistic kinds of ways organizations can behave. And his story is a great one to show how it evolved. Very, very, as Don would say, naturally. And then the only other thing I had is a comment on the fact that I come in late. Gail pointed out sometimes I'm not relevant. And I have a choice. I could either come in late or not come in at all because I just am not a person who gets up at 6:30 in the morning on a Saturday. No,
I
normally.
can understand. I don't wake up in the morning either. So
Yeah. So, but I don't. Usually, if I don't catch the substance, halfway through a presentation, I usually just don't say anything. I'll just listen the rest of the way to what the conversation was about. So I try to be respectful of folks. I mean no disrespect when I come in late, but it's just my personal choice. And the choice is either don't call in at all or catch what you can. And I usually default to catch what I can and not be disruptive by asking irrelevant questions. But anyway, I just
Thank
want
you
to say
for
that.
Okay. Thanks, Daryl. Gail, then Barbara, and then I'm gonna,
Yes,
I've got
thank you.
a couple of additional comments for,
So before I forget, what Dustin said, this model, the MHC, if it's the right name, I think we can still find hierarchy in it, because it's about stages, about tasks. And so the higher, like, not, I won't say higher, but if you go to the next levels, it's more complex. So someone can say, he can even find some egoic thoughts, like they are more complex, they do more complex tasks, so they are more intelligent, or they are more, or they are better. So if like a baby can do only some little things, and you are an adult and you can do so many big things, you can still find a way to say, oh, I'm better or more advanced, which is not wrong actually, but it's true. But yeah, I think we can find hierarchy in all stage development models. But anyway,
thanks, Gail.
Okay.
Barbara, one to you. I know I scroll down. I noticed, Lucas, you haven't spoken yet, or haven't had a chance. Would you like to?
but I
weigh
didn't
in?
finish.
Oh, sorry.
So that was just about what Justin said, but I wanted to answer Jim's question. And before that, I wanted to go to the same thing as Barbara when she talked about the shadow. No, who talked about the shadow? No, it's not Barbara, it's Marjorie who said that there is a dark side and there is the shadow. Actually, I think there is a difference between the dark side and the shadow, because the dark side, it can be somewhat conscious. Like, I would not call it dark side, I would call it flaws. We all have our weaknesses and our flaws. So this can be somewhat conscious. It may not be conscious straight away, but it's not so far away in the consciousness. So you can just showcase it, and it shows up and you can see it. But shadow, it's very deep in the unconscious or the subconscious. You can't access it at all, because it represents anything you hate and you don't identify to, and that you're like, that's not me, I'm not like that at all, this is not me. So you really reject it, whether it's good or bad, actually, whether it's good quality, like I don't know, you're very patient, for instance, but in your family, but like for some reasons, patience was, you rejected patience for some reason, and now you don't identify to being patient. And so that's a way you can put some good things in the shadow. But anyway, so to access the shadow is very tricky. Like, it's not something you can help other people go through, except if you're a therapist specialized in that, and the person is okay to do it with you, and yeah, and they have to be ready for it. And usually that's something people work on when they are in yellow. Before that, it's very like people are shadow beings walking everywhere. So what you can do though is to talk to people about their weaknesses, the weaknesses of green, and just actually you just did it in this presentation. So don't worry about not trying to be able to talk about it or to raise this thing. You actually did it very well in this presentation. You just included for each level, you included something that show, hey, this is your limitation. So I really think you actually know how to do it. You already did it. So, and the way you did it in the presentation, I think is great. You don't need more than that. So continue to do that, maybe do a little bit more or talk a little bit about it more, you know? So people can, also you can put them, if it's in Zoom, you can put them in different rooms and they can work together, like 2 people or 3 people, like few people can work together on uncovering their limitations and their weaknesses that you talked about that in the group. And also, if you don't have just green people, but you have a mixture of stages, you can also on Zoom, you can put them in different rooms. So orange people in a room, and so they can work on their specific thing, which is why I think you don't necessarily have to be in presence with people. I think it can work also on Zoom.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gil. Lucas, do you want to have a chance to weigh in here?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was really great to listen to the presentation and the discussion afterwards while doing my gardening work. Yeah, I think the only thing that I want to contribute is just heads off to you, Jim, and and I can just barely imagine the kind of competence level that you have with your career and so on, and other folks who were in discussion. Yeah, what depth is there to explore, and how, like, what different layers are there to take into account when one wants to introduce dynamics, or rather a new form of treating other people or communicating with them. So that was quite inspirational, and yeah, really made myself think of how can I truly meet people where they're at. That's yeah,
Thank you, Lucas.
quite a question to contemplate.
Yeah, thank you, Lucas. Very quick story because we're just going past our time here, I think. But Ray and I got enthusiastic about this idea, this Ray Anderson. And again, this was in the 2004, 3, somewhere in there. I don't remember exactly. He got so excited about it. He had me present it essentially to his entire C-suite. So the executive officers of this multinational corporation at a retreat that they had. And as I was presenting, I could tell he was sitting in the back of the room. He didn't take a very dominant, posture in most of these meetings anymore. He was liking it. He was nodding. He was smiling. He was giving me as positive feedback as it possibly could through this short presentation, and it ended up being an utter disaster. Nobody else in the room got it. In fact, it re-emphasized the fact that Ray and Jim are out on this, on this cloud somewhere, and they've completely lost their minds. So I use this to say that I've got some scars from trying to present this in the past. So maybe that's driving me to seek your all's help, and maybe it can be helpful for others. But anyway, I don't know. For some reason, I thought that story might be interesting to your group right now. Paul, back to you.
Yeah, we're at the top of the hour. Barbara, if you got your hand up, I'll let you go. If you got something really poignant to say, I'll leave the recording on. But if not, I'll stop the recording and then you can go forward.
Leave it on for a second, Paul.
Sure.
I like Dustin's MHC ideas. However, I think you could present them to people like you and I, Jim, with and Daryl, for example, who have technical backgrounds and might be more comfortable, even if we had moved on to green, right? But I will tell you that the average green environmentalist with no real ability to work through math or those kinds of rigorous mathematical models, I don't think it will be. It's going to be just like the one you were describing, falling flat on its back, right?
Yeah, flattening its back would have
Because
been good. Yeah.
yeah, I think you're bang on in saying when you're working with green from a non-academic, non-technical background, that you want the stories. That's just what grabs them, and it is what it is. And I think as you get people questioning, now as you get people questioning whether these differences are real, bringing MHC up as an example of a rigorous analysis that shows differences in complexity and ways to measure it, including in adult humans, that might be something to have. Not as something you would ever present, but something is just pull out, well, excuse me,
Well,
guys.
or for an orange crab, yeah.
Right? Yep, orange crab, right. And even green, if they don't like what you're saying, will, nowadays especially, oh, just listen to the experts. Well, shoot, that just means that you're don't have enough subject knowledge and you're not willing to dig deep enough to get an answer. In my experience, and green does that a lot, right? Oh, some expert said, so it's okay. So I get pushback on that in green sometimes on environmental stuff. It's like, well, this expert said, and I look at the expert and they turned out to be a political science major with a minor in journalism.
Okay.
So yeah,
Oh,
so I love MHC, but I don't think other than as a reference, not useful.
Yeah, well, it brings up, and this will just be a placeholder maybe for future conversations. But what do you do with a green crowd that seems to have either completely lost their orange, like it's gone, or can you really get to a green place without having gone through orange? It just seems to be, it's in some cases it's just gone. It's just been
I don't think it's
removed.
gone. You and I think of orange on the technical side, right? Because our orange all had science and engineering and facts in the real world. Nowadays, there's a big chunk of orange that is political, economic.
Okay, that could be good. For further conversation, I'm concerned about the time.
Guys, this recording is getting way beyond.
Yeah, go ahead and shut off the recording.
Well, could I say one more thing before the recording is ended?
Dustin, can you make it really brief? Because I guarantee you, we put out a 2-hour, 2.5-hour recording of anything, you're going to get 3 people to watch it.
We may have already crossed the threshold. I don't know, but like, I understand. I'm not going to try to take very long. It's just that what I'm saying, I feel like what I just tried to say about the MHC is relevant to what is being asked right now. The people that identify with green code do not necessarily work at that level of complexity. So something I didn't fully elaborate on, and I should have, is that the relevance of the MHC to how people see the world. Like when I say it's the complexity with which they see the world, it's like it's literally how those people conceive of things and work with them in their minds. So amber, or blue rather, aligns with abstract, and there's a meaningful, real way in which like that stage comes online culturally when people start entertaining abstractions of like kinds of concrete things. And like the biggest, highest scaled one of those is God or ground or, you know, the absolute per a orange, sorry, not orange, blue thing. And then there's a meaningful way in which formal aligns with orange and systematic aligns with the change in thought at green, and why that's so decentering for, and freaky for people. And so if you're wondering like how they kind of skipped orange, it's because they never thought of the world at that level of complexity. They were never really like formally arranging relationships between abstract variables in their minds, which is what that is in the MHC. That's stage 10. So like they don't have that kind of rigor actually. They're acting out their culture in a way that is pretty simple sometimes and associated with really rather underdeveloped instincts in people. And that's what I mean. Like it isn't that people bypassed. It's that they never passed it in a meaningful way, just a different metric.
It's almost like a different line. But anyway, go ahead. Back to you.
Exactly.
Thank you.